There are stories that seem to rise gently through time, as if carried by a soft wind moving across centuries, reaching those who listen in the quiet hours of the night. These stories do not rush, do not demand, and do not seek to shock. They simply unfold, steady and serene, as if they were designed to guide the mind towards stillness. Among them, few are as enduring, mysterious, and deeply comforting as the myths of ancient Greece. They were told beside oil lamps, whispered in temples, and passed from traveler to traveler along dusty roads. Tonight, they serve a different purpose: to invite you into a calm world where the boundaries between the real and the divine blur in delicate and peaceful ways. Before sleep, the ancient Greeks believed the world changed. Day belonged to humans, but night belonged to older forces. They imagined that the moment the sun slipped below the horizon, the earth opened slightly, allowing primordial beings to drift upward through the darkness. These beings were not frightening shadows. They were gentle presences that shaped the rhythm of dreams, the quiet of rest, and the slow turning of thoughts that carried people into slumber. Falling asleep para os Gregos was almost a sacred act of passage into a quieter layer of existence where divine figures worked softly, unseen. Across the mountains of Arcadia and the islands of the Aegean, people gathered to hear stories meant to calm the spirit after long days of labor. Shepherds listened while watching their flocks settle. Sailors repeated them to steady their nerves before resting in creaking ships. Travelers told them to strangers beside dying campfires. These stories functioned not only as entertainment but also as companions for the night, offering explanations for the unexplainable moments that occur between wakefulness and sleep. Why do certain dreams feel like messages? Why do others vanish the moment we open our eyes? Why does the night feel heavy sometimes and featherlight at others? To answer such questions, the Greeks imagined that sleep was not an absence of activity but a landscape with its own geography, populated by deities that moved quietly through its valleys. They believed that every person entered this realm in a slightly different way. Some slipped into it like sinking into warm water. Others were pulled gently into it by unseen hands, and some wandered through it slowly, step by step, as if the night itself were guiding them. These thoughts were not considered exaggerated or fantastical. They were accepted as part of the rhythm of living. This worldview helped shape countless myths, and it is through these myths that we begin our journey. We start not with warriors, battles, or heroic quests, for those belong to the loud daylight. Instead, we begin with the beings who ruled the night creatures born before the Olympian gods, older than Zeus, older than the sky as we picture it, and older even than the concept of time as humans understand it. Their stories were whispered, not shouted. They were shared quietly by poets and priests, and preserved because they felt true in the soft way that dreams feel true. Imagine yourself walking slowly through an ancient courtyard as the last streaks of sunset fade into a deep, velvety blue. The air cools, the olive trees sway lightly. In the distance, a single pottery lamp flickers. You are not rushed. You are not expected to reach any destination. You are simply moving through a place shaped by memory and myth, a place where each step invites a quieter breath. In this space, the boundary between your world and the world of the ancients begins to dissolve. Their stories become your companions, guiding your thoughts toward stillness. Tonight, we enter the realm of the first of these beings, a figure so ancient and so essential that even the Olympians respected her. She was not a goddess of storms, or of war, or of agriculture. She had no throne on Mount Olympus and no crown forged by divine smiths. Her presence did not announce itself with lightning or thunder. Instead, she embodied something far more profound, the quiet darkness that wraps the world when all light fades. The Greeks called her Nyx, and they believed she was the source of the night itself. As you continue listening, the edges of her story begin to form like distant constellations. Her presence is neither threatening nor alarming. It is vast, still, and deeply calming, like the moment just before sleep takes hold. Her myths do not shout for attention. They open slowly, like the petals of a flower unfolding beneath moonlight, guiding you deeper into the tranquility of the ancient night. Nyx was not born into a world shaped and structured like the one we imagine from later myths. According to the oldest Greek traditions, she emerged from a state called chaos, a vast and undefined nothingness. This chaos was not turbulent or violent. It was calm, open, and waiting. From it, Nyx arose as a veil of quiet darkness, gentle yet infinite, carrying with her the power to soften the world with stillness. The Greeks envisioned her not as a threatening force, but as a protective shadow that settled over the earth each evening, offering rest to mortals and gods alike. Her presence marked the beginning of everything the night makes possible: dreams, reflection, privacy, and the slow unwinding of the day's emotions. Poets described Nyx as a figure with wings so wide they could cover the sky in a single sweep. Others imagined her drifting like mist, her form barely visible against the deep blue of the heavens. She was said to ride across the world in a dark chariot, guided by horses the color of obsidian, leaving silence in her path. This image was not meant to inspire fear. Instead, it emphasized how naturally night arrives, how it moves across cities, mountains, and oceans without effort. Even Zeus, the king of the gods and ruler of thunder, respected her authority. There is an account in which Zeus avoids angering Nyx at all costs, not out of terror, but because her essence was older and deeper than his own, connected to forces that shaped the world before he existed. Nyx was not alone in the vastness. From her, many other beings were said to emerge, each connected to an aspect of the night. She gave birth to Hypnos, the deity of sleep, whose gentle touch closed mortal eyes; to Thanatos, the quiet presence associated with peaceful endings; to Moros, who represented destiny; and to Nemesis, the spirit of balance and justice. Some traditions even claimed that the Fates, who wove the thread of human life, were descended from her. These figures, whether feared or revered, shared a common thread. They worked in the concealed hours, the moments when daylight could no longer distract the mind. Despite her importance, Nyx did not appear frequently in dramatic stories. Her power was subtle, expressed not through battles or speeches, but through atmosphere. To understand her, imagine the sensation of stepping outside late at night when the world is quiet. The air feels different, sounds are softened, lights seem dimmer. Even familiar places carry a sense of mystery. The Greeks believed these sensations were expressions of Nyx herself, small reminders of her presence woven into the fabric of the world. She was the calm behind every peaceful evening and the stillness that settles when a long day finally ends. Some ancient philosophers offered interpretations that feel strikingly modern. They suggested that Nyx symbolized the unknown aspects of the human mind, especially those revealed in dreams and contemplation. They argued that nighttime was essential because it created space for introspection. Without darkness, they believed, the mind would be overwhelmed by constant stimuli. In this way, Nyx represented a kind of cosmic balance. The day illuminated life, while the night helped organize thoughts, emotions, and memories. This is not a proven fact, of course, but a philosophical perspective recorded by thinkers observing how sleep reshaped human behavior. Although Nyx rarely interacted directly with mortals, many rituals indirectly honored her influence. Travelers often prayed at dusk for a safe passage through the night, trusting that her presence would soften dangers. Farmers paused in the fields to acknowledge the fading light, watching the horizon darken as if Nyx were approaching from afar. Families gathered around hearths, telling stories or sharing meals as the sky deepened. These quiet moments echoed across generations, became part of her myth without ever needing formal worship. To imagine her world, picture a vast landscape with no sun and no clouds, only a star-streaked sky, stretching endlessly in every direction. In this realm, Nyx moved effortlessly, carrying with her the dreams, fears, hopes, and reflections of all who slept beneath her. Her domain was not a place of shadows meant to unsettle, but a sanctuary designed to soothe. In the deepest layers of Greek mythology, night was portrayed as a companion, not an enemy, and Nyx was the embodiment of that companionship. As her story unfolds, another figure steps forward from her lineage, one whose presence shaped the boundary between waking life and the gentle descent into dreams. His touch was said to be lighter than a feather drifting across skin, yet powerful enough to lull armies and calm restless minds. His name was Hypnos, and his realm lay in a quiet valley where time moved differently, inviting all who approached into peaceful rest. In the quiet lineage of Nyx, Hypnos emerged as a presence both subtle and essential, the gentle force guiding mortals into the realm of rest. The Greeks imagined him not as a distant deity on a golden throne, but as a figure who moved softly between the world of humans and the deeper landscapes shaped only by dreams. His domain was said to be a hidden valley far beyond the hustle of Olympus, surrounded by poppy fields that shimmered in muted shades of red and gold. These flowers were not symbols of danger but emblems of calm, their delicate scent drifting through the air to quiet the mind. The valley itself was shaded by a canopy of intertwined branches that filtered the light into a soft twilight, neither fully night nor fully day, the perfect threshold for drifting into sleep. Some poets described Hypnos as a young man with wings sprouting from his temples, allowing him to glide silently over the earth. Others imagined him with wings on his back, dark and feathered like the night breeze. What mattered was not his form but his manner. He was gentle, patient, and steady. Unlike other deities who commanded storms or shaped mountains, Hypnos influenced the smallest motions of the human mind, the slowing of thoughts, the softening of tension, the release of worries. His power was quiet but absolute, crossing boundaries even Zeus could not easily reach. In myths, Zeus occasionally sought his help, knowing that even the greatest ruler could not resist the lull of sleep. Hypnos' home was described as a cave where no sound could disturb the stillness. Rivers of lethe water flowed nearby, carrying forgetfulness in their currents. These waters were not meant to erase memories permanently, but to ease the mind of burdens before sleep. The entrance of the cave was surrounded by countless poppies, their petals glowing faintly as if touched by starlight. Inside, the world felt hushed, the walls lined with layered shadows that shifted softly like curtains. According to some ancient traditions, no mortal could enter this space physically. Instead, they visited it through the natural drifting of consciousness each night. From this cave, Hypnos sent his influence through the world. A single feather from his wings was said to bring sleep to an entire household. A touch on the forehead could calm crying children, restless warriors, or wandering souls. His presence was not a command but an invitation, a reminder that rest was not weakness but a necessary passage for healing and balance. The Greeks understood that the mind, overwhelmed by constant activity, needed Hypnos' embrace to restore clarity and emotional steadiness. In their worldview, losing sleep was not simply uncomfortable. It risked disturbing the harmony between body and spirit. Hypnos also had a twin brother, Thanatos, associated with gentle endings. Stories emphasized that the two were not enemies of life but custodians of transitions. While Thanatos guided souls at the end of their journey, Hypnos guided them through nightly renewal. Their connection reflected an ancient belief that sleep and death were related in symbolic ways, not as threats but as natural shifts between states of being. Modern scholars often comment on how this symbolism mirrors psychological observations about how deeply sleep shapes memory, emotion, and perception. Although this interpretation is not an ancient fact, it aligns with the philosophical writings that survived through time. One of the most intriguing accounts involving Hypnos describes a moment when even Hera, queen of the gods, sought his help. Wanting to distract Zeus, she approached Hypnos and asked him to lull the king into rest. At first, he refused, knowing the consequences of interfering with Zeus's vigilance. But Hera eventually convinced him, and Hypnos performed the task with remarkable grace, sending Zeus into a deep slumber. Although Zeus later realized what had happened, he could not punish Hypnos severely. The power of sleep was too vital, too fundamental, and even Zeus recognized that interfering with it would disrupt the natural order. Mortals rarely prayed directly to Hypnos, not because they feared him, but because they trusted that he would come each night without being summoned. In small villages, people sometimes placed sprigs of poppy near their doors or beds, symbolizing the deity's presence. Sailors preparing for long voyages carried dried poppy seeds in tiny pouches to help steady their minds during restless nights at sea. These customs were simple, peaceful, and deeply rooted in the belief that rest was a gift from a benevolent force rather than something earned. As the influence of Hypnos deepened each night, the mind drifted from clarity into imagination. Thoughts that were sharp during the day became soft shapes. Emotions loosened their grip, and within that shift, another force began its work, a deity who shaped dreams themselves, crafting visions with care and intention. This was Morpheus, a figure whose artistry would give form, color, and meaning to the landscapes created under Hypnos' gentle guidance. If Hypnos guided mortals into the threshold of sleep, it was Morpheus who stepped forward once consciousness loosened its hold. His role was not simply to decorate the night with random visions. He was the artisan who sculpted dreams with intention, giving them shape, emotion, texture, and meaning. The Greeks pictured him moving through the sleeping world like a quiet painter gliding across a vast canvas. Every dream, whether soothing, symbolic, or mysterious, was a fragment of his craft. In ancient poetry, he was described as the most gifted among the Onaroi, the collective spirits of dreams, and the one trusted to appear in forms so lifelike that mortals believed they were communicating with God's ancestors or distant loved ones. Morpheus's name, derived from the word morph, meaning form or shape, reveals his purpose. He could appear as anyone in a dream, copying their voice, their gestures, and the softness or sharpness of their expression. Ancient writers emphasized that he never chose these forms lightly. He selected them with care, especially when dreams carried messages either from divine forces or from the sleeper's own inner world. Some versions of the myth suggest that Zeus himself tasked Morpheus with delivering warnings or insights to mortals. Trusting his precision and discretion, Whether this was divine truth or poetic symbolism remains uncertain, but the idea reflects how seriously the Greeks regarded dreams as a method of communication. His realm, like that of Hypnos, was imagined as a landscape far removed from ordinary life. Whereas the cave of Hypnos was twilight and quiet, Morpheus worked in a space filled with drifting mists and faint glimmers of color. Here, thoughts, memories, and emotions swirled in gentle currents, waiting for him to gather and weave them into narratives. This was not a place of confusion, but a workshop where experiences were transformed into dream imagery. The craftsmanship of Morpheus was intense yet peaceful, a creative act that flowed effortlessly. The Greeks believed that when a dream felt unusually vivid, when a voice sounded clear or a place looked impossibly real, it was a sign that Morpheus himself had shaped it. Although the myths often describe his visions as messages from higher powers, modern interpretations lean towards psychological symbolism. Scholars sometimes suggest that Morpheus represents the human ability to process emotions through dreams, turning complex feelings into stories the mind can understand. This interpretation is not historically proven, but aligns with what ancient Greek doctors observed about the connection between sleep and mental balance. They noticed that people who dreamed frequently often woke calmer, as if the night had helped untangle knots of thought. Whether or not the Greeks framed it as psychology, they believed that dreams had purpose and weight. Morpheus was also connected to creativity. Ancient poets, artists, and storytellers often credited him with inspiring their ideas. They believed that some dreams were not random but gifts, glimpses of worlds, melodies, and narratives waiting to be brought into waking life. Several surviving texts hint at this belief, describing how visionaries felt guided by a presence during sleep. They did not claim direct visitations from gods. Instead, they attributed their inspiration to a subtle figure who worked silently within their minds. For many, this figure was Morpheus, shaping not only dreams but the seeds of art. Despite his influence, Morpheus rarely appeared in dramatic mythic tales. He was not a warrior, nor did he participate in divine arguments or cosmic battles. His power lay entirely in the intangible realm, and perhaps this is why he fascinated so many philosophers. They saw him as a symbol of transformation, the bridge between reality and imagination. He existed where logic softened, where emotions rearranged themselves, and where the human mind revealed truths that daylight often concealed. To the Greeks, dreams were not escapism. They were another form of clarity. One of the most meaningful aspects of Morpheus' myth is the idea that he approached every sleeper with a unique intention. For some, he delivered simple, comforting dreams, quiet scenes of familiar faces, or peaceful landscapes. For others, he crafted symbolic visions, urging reflection. And for a few, he brought warnings or guidance. These distinctions made him one of the most respected figures in the quiet hierarchy of the night. His presence suggested that sleep was not merely physical rest, but an experience shaped by forces beyond immediate understanding. As the myths progressed across generations, the image of Morpheus shifted. Later, writers imagined him wrapping dreams in delicate wings made of shadow and light, carrying them to sleeping mortals like fragile gifts. They described how he moved through bedrooms, temples, ships, and distant fields without sound, observing breath patterns, heartbeats, and emotional tension. When he placed a dream upon someone, it rested gently, causing eyelids to twitch or lips to form faint, unconscious smiles. This attention to subtlety gave his myth a soothing quality that made him especially beloved in stories meant to calm the mind. And as the dreams he shaped drifted through sleeping populations, another figure rose quietly from the traditions of healing, one who connected the worlds of medicine, ritual, and the mystery of night. In sanctuaries where people slept not for rest but for transformation, his presence guided the boundary between illness and recovery. His name was Asclepius, and his connection to sleep carried a power unlike any other in ancient Greece. As dreams drifted softly through the minds of mortals, another figure shaped the night in a more tangible way. Asclepius, revered as the god of healing, stood at the intersection between myth and early medicine. Unlike other deities whose stories belonged entirely to the realm of legend, Asclepius exists in a space filled with historical speculation. Some ancient writers believed he had once been a gifted healer, a real man whose abilities seemed so extraordinary that later generations elevated him to divine status. Others insisted he was born a god from the beginning, carrying the knowledge of herbs, rituals, and restorative sleep as part of his divine nature. Whether historical or mythical, his influence on Greek healing traditions was profound. His sanctuaries, known as Asclepia, were unlike typical temples. They were peaceful complexes built in regions chosen for their natural serenity, areas with pure water, mild breezes, and fragrant groves. People traveled great distances to reach these places, not seeking miraculous cures, but an experience called incubation, a ritual in which they slept inside a sacred hall known as the abaton. The Greeks believed that during this sleep, Asclepius or his agents, often depicted as serpents or gentle spirits, appeared in dreams to diagnose illnesses or reveal treatments. These encounters were not chaotic visions but clear, structured dreams described with remarkable consistency in surviving inscriptions. The process began with preparation. Visitors would bathe in spring water, offer small tokens of gratitude, and purify their minds by reflecting on their intentions. Priests guided them through gentle rituals, focusing not on dramatic ceremonies but on calm, repetitive practices meant to settle the body and quiet the mind. As night fell, the abaton filled with the soft sound of people settling onto straw mats. The air held the faint scent of olive oil lamps burning in nearby corridors. No torches crackled, no voices echoed. The atmosphere was deliberate, crafted to allow hypnosis to take hold gently, leading each visitor to the threshold where Morpheus could begin his work. Descriptions of the dreams varied, but many carried similarities. Some dreamers reported that Asclepius touched the part of their body that ached. Others said he offered symbolic objects, vessels of water, branches, or gentle animals, each representing a path to recovery. A few claimed to see him accompanied by serpents, which were sacred beings associated with regeneration due to their ability to shed their skin. In these dreams, the serpents did not frighten anyone. They appeared calm, their movements slow and fluid, representing renewal rather than danger. Upon waking, dreamers often felt clarity, reporting that they knew which herbs to seek, which behaviors to change, or which emotions to release. Modern scholars debate the precise nature of these rituals. Some argue that they were early forms of psychological treatment, where suggestions made during sleep influenced the mind's ability to heal the body. Others suggest that the environment alone, fresh air, gentle routine, and supportive community played a significant role. These theories remain unconfirmed, but they highlight the sophistication of Greek healing practices. What is certain is that the Greeks viewed sleep not as passive rest but as an active force in restoration. In their worldview, night was a realm where healing accelerated, guided by divine presence. Asclepius's legacy extended beyond dreams. His daughters embodied different aspects of health. Hygia represented cleanliness and preventative care. Panacea symbolized universal remedies, and Iaso, associated with slow recovery, reflected the idea that healing was often a gradual journey. Together they formed a harmonious cycle in which treatment, prevention, and patience worked side by side. This holistic perspective, surprisingly modern in tone, shows how deeply the Greeks valued balance. They believed that a calm mind and a peaceful environment were essential elements of any cure. In the sanctuaries, inscriptions on stone tablets recorded the stories of those who sought Asclepius's help. Some described dramatic recoveries, attributed to divine intervention. Others focused on subtle improvements such as lighter breathing, steadier hearts, or relief from oppressive worries. Although these accounts cannot be verified, they offer glimpses into the emotional lives of ancient people. They also reveal the importance of hope. Even if a cure did not arrive, the ritual itself provided comfort. The idea that a divine healer watched over them during sleep created a sense of safety that eased suffering. The sanctuaries also served as communal spaces. People shared food, stories, and concerns while waiting for their turn to sleep in the abbot. These gatherings were not chaotic or loud. They were quiet exchanges, helping one another through uncertainty. Pilgrims found companionship with strangers who understood their pain. Healing, in this sense, began long before dreams arrived. It began with collective softness, a shared belief that rest could restore what hardship had strained. Within this network of healing and hope, another sacred site held a different kind of mystery. Far to the west, in a place where winds whispered through ancient oaks, people listened for guidance not from dreams but from the voice of nature itself. This was Dodona, the oldest oracle of Greece, where messages emerged not from human speech but from the rustling of leaves carried by the night air. In the quiet landscape of Epirus, surrounded by mountains that softened the wind into a gentle hush, stood a sanctuary unlike any other in Greece. It did not dazzle with marble columns or golden statues. It did not draw crowds with dramatic rituals or thunderous proclamations. Instead, Dodona offered something more delicate, guidance carried through the rustling of ancient oak leaves, interpreted by priests who had dedicated their lives to listening. This oracle was believed to be the oldest in the Greek world, predating even the famous sanctuary of Delphi. Its power did not come from grand visions but from the mysterious stillness that settled around it at night. Visitors arrived seeking clarity about their lives, questions of travel, marriage, childbirth, and everyday anxieties. They approached not expecting booming voices or sudden revelation, but hoping for reassurance in the subtle movement of branches above them. The grove of Dodona was filled with towering oaks believed to be sacred to Zeus. Their leaves shimmered softly in the wind, creating patterns of sound that seemed almost intentional. Priests known as the Seloi listened closely, lying on the ground or leaning against the trees, their ears trained to recognize shifts in tone or rhythm. They interpreted these sounds as messages from the divine, believing that Zeus spoke through nature rather than through speech. Night transformed a sanctuary. The air cooled, shadows deepened, and the grove took on a nearly dreamlike quality. Travelers described the experience as calming, not eerie. The sound of leaves brushing against each other created a natural lullaby, mingling with distant calls of birds settling into sleep. Even those who doubted the oracle's power found comfort in this atmosphere. It was easy to imagine that wisdom lived in the space between each whisper of wind, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The Greeks often stood beneath the trees with their eyes closed, letting the sounds wash over them before approaching the priests with their questions. Archaeologists have long debated how the oracle operated. Some argue that the priests were exceptionally observant, using subtle cues, weather shifts, animal movements, or a visitor's facial expressions to craft meaningful answers. Others believe that the grove itself created a psychological effect, encouraging introspection in those who spent time there. While none of these theories are confirmed, they reflect the ancient understanding that the natural world held truths humans sometimes overlooked. For the Greeks, Dodona was a reminder that wisdom could be gentle, quiet, and woven into the environment. The sanctuary also included a few unique rituals. One involved bronze cauldrons placed around a central pillar. When struck, they produced resonant tones that lingered in the air, merging with the rustling of the leaves. This created a soundscape that felt almost otherworldly, soft, rhythmic, and meditative. Priests and priestesses used these sounds during ceremonies meant to cleanse the mind of doubt. Those who experienced it described the sensation as calming, as if each vibration brushed away layers of worry. Although the full details of these rituals have faded over time, the fragments that remain suggest a deep connection between sound, nature, and spiritual clarity. What set Dodona apart from other oracles was its simplicity. There were no hidden chambers or prophetic trances induced by vapors or substances. The messages did not come through elaborate visions but through natural signs. The movement of leaves, the flight of birds, the ringing of bronze. This simplicity made the oracle accessible. People from remote villages, far from the sophistication of Athens or Corinth, could understand its language. It felt familiar, grounded in the rhythms of the earth. Many came not for dramatic prophecy but for reassurance that the world still held order. Even when personal challenges created uncertainty in the evenings, after receiving guidance, visitors often lingered in the sanctuary, lying beneath the trees as sleep began to settle upon them. The combination of night air, soft murmurs of leaves, and the stillness of the grove created a sense of safety. Some claimed that their dreams that night felt clearer, as if shaped by Morpheus under the guidance of the oracle's influence. Whether true or imagined, these experiences contributed to Dodona's reputation as a place where waking and dreaming met gently at the edge of night. Dodona remained important for centuries, yet its reputation was eventually overshadowed by another oracle, one whose influence reached kings, generals, and entire cities. This new sanctuary stood at the base of Mount Parnassus, a place where myths and mystery intertwined. There, beneath towering cliffs, a sacred story unfolded about a young god, a powerful serpent, and a sanctuary that would become the most famous prophetic site of the ancient world. And at the heart of this story lay a mystery about vapors, trances, and the whispered messages of Apollo. At the foot of Mount Parnassus, where cliffs rose sharply like ancient guardians of the land, stood a sanctuary whose reputation traveled farther than any road in Greece. Delphi was a place where mountains met sky in crisp, shimmering air, and where people believed the divine voice of Apollo could be heard through a human intermediary. Unlike Dodona, which offered gentle messages through nature, Delphi carried an aura of intensity wrapped in layers of mystery. Yet even here, in a place where decisions shaped kingdoms, the night softened the landscape, calming the steep paths and silver-leafed olive groves that lined the sacred valley. According to myth, Delphi began with a confrontation between the young god Apollo and a powerful serpent called Python. The serpent was ancient, born from the earth itself, guarding the site long before the Olympians claimed their thrones. Some traditions portray Python as a monstrous guardian, while others suggest it symbolized older religious practices that Apollo eventually replaced. Whether the myth reflects spiritual transition or symbolic storytelling remains debated. But all versions agree on one detail. After Apollo defeated Python, he established his oracle on the very ground where the serpent had lived. The victory was not told as a tale of violence, but as the transformation of a wild, untamed power into a channel for insight. At the center of Delphi stood the Temple of Apollo, built on terraces that climbed the mountainside. Pilgrims approached along the sacred way, past treasuries filled with offerings from distant cities. They came seeking answers to questions both personal and political. But it was the Pythia, the priestess of Apollo, who became the voice they trusted. She sat upon a tripod above a deep opening in the earth, and from this opening rose vapors that played a central role in her visions. Ancient texts describe how the Pythia entered a trance-like state, speaking words that priests later shaped into poetic responses. These messages were treated with reverence, seen as insights from Apollo himself. Modern researchers have long debated the nature of these vapors. Some argue that they were symbolic and not literal, part of a ritual designed to focus the mind. Others suggest that geologic activity beneath the temple released gases capable of producing mild altered states. This theory gained attention after studies of the region revealed fault lines and traces of substances that could influence consciousness when inhaled in small amounts. Yet none of these theories are fully proven. The true mechanism behind the oracle's power remains uncertain, adding to the sense of mystery that surrounded Delphi even in antiquity. What mattered most to the Greeks was not the scientific explanation but the transformative experience. Those who visited Delphi described the sanctuary as charged with a unique kind of energy. The crisp mountain air seemed sharper, the stones underfoot warmer, and the quiet spaces between sounds deeper than in other places. Night in Delphi carried a distinct stillness. As shadows stretched across the valley, the temple's white columns glowed faintly under moonlight, and the mountains formed a protective circle around the sanctuary. Travelers often slept nearby, believing the presence of Apollo would steady their dreams and prepare their minds for whatever message awaited them. The Pythia delivered guidance on matters that shaped entire cultures. She advised kings before battles, helped founders choose locations for cities, and offered counsel on laws, marriages, journeys, and spiritual uncertainties. But the oracle was famously ambiguous, offering insight through phrases that required interpretation. This ambiguity was intentional. The Greeks believed that prophecy was never meant to erase choice but to illuminate possibilities. The Pythia's words pushed people to reflect, not to follow blindly. This subtle balance between divine message and human decision mirrored the natural rhythm of night and day where clarity rises slowly, as dawn does, rather than appearing in a single burst. Despite Delphi's grandeur, the sanctuary was deeply connected to the quiet, introspective side of Greek belief. Temples, treasuries, and monuments framed the space, yet the core experience remained personal. Pilgrims often found that simply reaching Delphi changed them. The journey through the mountains was long and contemplative, offering time to consider their questions before even stepping onto the sacred way. Many wrote that they felt a sense of peace as they approached the temple, as if Apollo's presence calmed the tension they carried. Even those who did not receive clear answers left with a renewed sense of purpose. At night, the sanctuary became especially tranquil. The Pythia did not deliver prophecies after sunset, but pilgrims often wandered the terraces beneath the stars, listening to the wind moving through pines and the soft murmur of distant springs. Some believed that Apollo's twin sister Artemis watched over the valley at night, her presence sensed in the cool light that washed over the mountains. Others felt that the spiritual weight of the day lingered in the air, settling into the landscape like a gentle echo. The stillness was so complete that many travelers wrote about sleeping more deeply in Delphi than anywhere else along their journeys. From this place of prophecy and mystery, Greek myths turn once again toward gentler terrain. Beyond the mountains and sacred temples lies a tale rooted not in political destiny but in emotional transformation. It is a story of love tested through trials, self-discovery born from longing, and a journey woven through both daylight and the soft embrace of night. A tale of Eros and Psyche whose path reveals how the heart navigates what words cannot fully describe. Among the countless Greek myths shaped by longing, change, and the quiet language of the heart, few resonate as gently as the story of Eros and Psyche. It is a tale that moves not with the urgency of battle nor the force of divine command, but with an intimate rhythm that mirrors the slow unfolding of trust. While other myths shout their lessons through dramatic gestures, this one whispers its meaning through moments of vulnerability. In the soft glow of ancient storytelling, it reflects how love, uncertainty, and self-discovery shape the inner life of every human being. Psyche, whose name means soul, was said to be a mortal woman of such beauty that people compared her to Aphrodite herself. This comparison stirred jealousy in the goddess of love, who feared that mortals might elevate Psyche to highly. But despite her beauty, Psyche lived a life filled with hesitation. She did not understand the admiration she received, nor did she feel pride in it. Instead, she moved cautiously through the world, sensing that something beyond her control would soon shift the path beneath her feet. Eros, the god of desire and son of Aphrodite, entered Psyche's life not as a thunderous presence but as a quiet force shaped by conflicting loyalties. His mother ordered him to make Psyche fall hopelessly in love with someone unworthy. Yet when he approached her, he found himself captivated by her innocence and humility. In some versions of the myth, he accidentally scratched himself with one of his own arrows, causing him to fall deeply and irrevocably in love with her. Whether this moment was accidental or symbolic remains unknown, but its effect was the same. Their lives became intertwined in a way neither fully understood. Eros arranged for Psyche to be carried by a soft wind to a hidden palace where she would live surrounded by beauty and comfort. Every evening he visited her under the cover of darkness, speaking gently and guiding her through the unfamiliar world she now inhabited. Psyche felt warmth in his presence, yet she was troubled by one rule: she was never allowed to see his face. This secrecy planted seeds of doubt, not because Eros gave her reason to fear, but because uncertainty has a way of growing in the absence of clarity. She wondered who he truly was, why he hid from her, and whether he trusted her in return. Psyche's sisters, jealous of her mysterious new life, fueled her fears. They convinced her that her unseen companion might be a danger disguised as kindness. Their warnings echoed through Psyche's thoughts until doubt overshadowed the comfort she once felt. One night, unable to resist, she lit a small oil lamp while Eros slept beside her. The warm glow revealed not a monster but the beautiful god of love himself. Overwhelmed by awe and remorse, Psyche trembled, and a drop of hot oil fell onto his shoulder. Eros woke abruptly, wounded not by the heat but by the broken trust. Without anger, but with deep sorrow, he told her that love cannot thrive where fear rules the heart. Then he vanished from the palace, leaving Psyche alone. What followed was not a punishment but a journey of transformation. Determined to regain Eros's trust, Psyche sought him across fields, rivers, and mountains. She approached Aphrodite, who set her a series of challenges. These tasks, often interpreted as symbolic trials of the soul, required patience, humility, and courage. Each challenge brought Psyche closer to understanding herself and the nature of love. They were not tests meant to break her, but to reveal her resilience and sincerity. She sorted grains, gathered fragile golden wool, fetched water from a dangerous river, and descended into the realm of the dead, all tasks impossible without help from gentle forces who believed in her. One of the most meaningful elements of Psyche's journey was the support she received from unexpected allies. Ants helped her separate tiny seeds. A reed whispered advice when she feared approaching the river. Even an eagle assisted her when the challenge demanded impossible strength. These helpers represented the idea that kindness attracts kindness, and that even in moments of isolation, the world offers guidance if the heart remains open. Psyche's final task brought her to the edge of the underworld, where she collected a box said to contain divine beauty. But curiosity overcame her, and she opened it. Instead of beauty, a sleep-like darkness drifted out, pulling her into deep stillness. This detail echoes the belief that the soul must embrace vulnerability before it can rise renewed. When Eros found her, he revived her gently, moved by the depth of her devotion. He carried her to Olympus, where Zeus granted her immortality so they could be united without barrier or fear. Their reunion was not portrayed as perfect bliss but as the culmination of growth, trust, and mutual understanding. Their story survived through centuries not because of its grand divine elements but because it reflects the quiet truths found in relationships. Love requires openness, patience, and the willingness to confront uncertainty. It grows strongest when shaped by both joy and struggle, by both longing and forgiveness. For the Greeks, Eros and Psyche embodied the delicate dance between desire and the soul, showing how the heart moves through phases of doubt and discovery until it settles into deeper clarity. As their tales softened into memory, another story rose from the fields and gardens of the earth, one woven with cycles of darkness and light, departure and return, and the ancient rhythm that shapes every season. At its center stands Persephone, whose path reveals how even the quietest myth can shape the heartbeat of the natural world. Among the myths that echo most softly through time, none express the cycles of loss and return as profoundly as the story of Persephone. Her tale unfolds not with sudden violence or heroic triumph, but with a slow, emotional unfolding that mirrors the turning of the year itself. The Greeks used her journey to explain not only the shifting seasons, but also the inner landscapes of the human heart, the way it contracts in times of difficulty and opens again when warmth returns. Through Persephone, they explored themes of transition, patience, and the quiet resilience that grows in the spaces between darkness and light. Persephone, daughter of Demeter, lived among fields where flowers bloomed in countless colors. Her presence was said to brighten the earth, encouraging plants to flourish and rivers to flow gently. She moved with a grace that reflected the tender balance between youth and maturity, innocence and awakening. Demeter adored her deeply, guarding her with a protective love that carried both warmth and an undertone of fear, the fear every parent feels when they realize they cannot shelter a child from the world forever. One day, while Persephone gathered flowers in a meadow with her companions, the earth opened silently beneath her feet. From the shadows emerged Hades, lord of the underworld. He carried her away, not in rage, but in a somber act driven by longing. Having fallen in love with her beauty and spirit, some ancient versions of the myth portray this moment as sudden and jarring, while others soften the event, suggesting that Persephone was destined to bridge the worlds of above and below. Whether interpreted literally or symbolically, the story became a rich metaphor for transitions that shape a person's life. Demeter, upon realizing her daughter was gone, wandered the world in sorrow. Her grief affected the land. Plants withered, animals slowed, and fields once vibrant fell silent. The world entered a period of barrenness, mirroring the emptiness she felt. Mortals prayed for relief, sensing that something cosmic had shifted. This part of the myth illustrates the deep connection the Greeks felt between human emotion and the natural world. They believed that the inner lives of deities echoed through the environment, showing that sorrow and renewal were intertwined. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Persephone found herself surrounded by a realm often misunderstood in modern imagination. The Greeks did not view the underworld as a place of punishment for all souls, but as a quiet kingdom where spirits rested and awaited their next stage. Hades treated Persephone with solemn respect, offering her a throne beside his own. Though she missed the brightness of the world above, she gradually found a new kind of strength in this shadowed realm. Her presence brought a touch of warmth, softening corners of the underworld that had never known light. The turning point of the myth arrives with the pomegranate seeds. Hades offered Persephone the fruit as a gesture of affection. By eating a small number of seeds, 6 or sometimes 4, she became bound to return to the underworld for part of each year. This detail has been interpreted in many ways, as a symbol of commitment, as a metaphor for emotional growth, or as a representation of life's natural cycles. Some scholars believe the myth reflects agricultural realities, connecting the dormancy of winter with Persephone's time below, and the rebirth of spring with her return to the surface. While unproven, this idea aligns with the ancient understanding of nature as a living reflection of spiritual truth. When Persephone finally reunited with Demeter, their embrace brought renewal to the land. Flowers reappeared, wheat sprouted, birds returned to the fields. But the world could not remain in endless spring. Persephone was destined to spend part of the year with Hades, ruling beside him with increasing wisdom and calm. Each time she descended, the earth grew quiet. Each time she rose, life awakened again. This cycle gave structure to the Greek conception of time, a gentle ebb and flow, neither wholly joyful nor wholly sorrowful, but balanced in a way that mirrored human experience. The emotional core of the myth lies in its portrayal of change, not as loss but as transformation. Persephone did not remain the carefree maiden she once was, nor did she become a figure defined solely by shadow. She became a bridge between realms, carrying compassion to both. The Greeks understood her as a symbol of maturity, representing the shift from youth into deeper understanding. Her story comforted those who faced transitions, reminding them that even in moments of darkness, renewal waits patiently beneath the surface. In the quiet hours of the night, storytellers often shared this myth to offer reassurance. They spoke of Persephone's ability to adapt, of Demeter's enduring love, and of the way the earth itself breathes through periods of rest and awakening. The tale helped listeners accept the cycles of their own lives, whether they faced personal setbacks, emotional winters, or unexpected changes. Persephone's return each spring was a promise that warmth would always return, even after the longest period of stillness. As her footsteps rose from the underworld each year, they stirred more than blossoms, they stirred hope. And from tales rooted in the earth, Greek myth moves next into the realm of sound, emotion, and longing. It turns to the story of a musician whose song could calm wild creatures and soften the hearts of gods. His name was Orpheus, and his journey revealed how music weaves through both joy and grief. guiding souls through moments too fragile for words. Among the stories carried through the ancient world on soft evening breezes, none blend grief and beauty as delicately as the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. It is a myth whispered for comfort, not sorrow, because it reveals how love can move through silence, shape the unseen, and echo long after a moment has passed. Unlike myths driven by heroism or conflict, this one flows like a slow melody, wrapped in tenderness. The Greeks believed that while many forces shaped human life, few were as powerful or as fragile as the pull between two souls bound by devotion. Orpheus was known not for strength or strategic mind, but for his extraordinary ability to soothe the world through music. Born to the muse Calliope, he inherited a gift that exceeded mortal understanding. When he played his lyre, rivers slowed their currents, birds paused mid-flight, and wild creatures gathered peacefully around him. Even the restless wind softened, as if choosing to listen. His melodies carried an emotional truth that words alone could not hold, weaving joy, longing, and quiet reflection into every note. People said that Orpheus did not simply play music, he revealed the hidden contours of the human heart. Eurydice entered his life with the calm grace of someone who brought light wherever she walked. Their connection deepened, not through dramatic gestures, but through gentle moments spent near meadows, streams, and shaded groves. She moved with a serenity that balanced Orpheus's sensitivity, grounding him in ways he never expected. Their bond grew effortlessly, rooted in trust and shared silence. For those who watched them, their love seemed like a small sanctuary in a world often shaken by gods and fate. But myths are shaped by turning points, and theirs came swiftly. While walking through the grass one afternoon, Eurydice stepped on a serpent hidden among the wildflowers. The bite took her life so quietly that some storytellers describe the moment as a shadow passing over sunlit fields. Orpheus's grief was not explosive, it was hollow, heavy, and consuming. Music, once the source of all joy, became the only way he could express what had been taken from him. His melodies shifted into soft lamentations that resonated through forests and hills, reaching not only the living but the world beneath. Unable to accept the finality of loss, Orpheus made a choice few mortals dared to consider. He descended into the underworld, guided only by the faint glow of his music. The Greeks imagined the underworld as a realm of muted colors and still air, where spirits drifted peacefully. As Orpheus walked through its gates, his music awakened emotions long forgotten by the shadows. Ferrymen and guardians lowered their weapons. Spirits gathered near him, their forms quivering with recognition. Even the eternally solemn Hades paused, moved by a longing he rarely allowed himself to feel. Persephone, who understood the ache of separation more than anyone, listened to Orpheus's plea with a soft heart. She persuaded Hades to grant Eurydice a chance to return to the world above, but with one condition. As they walked toward the surface, Orpheus could not look back at her until they reached the brightness of day. The rule was simple, yet profound. Trust must carry them through darkness. The return journey became one of the most emotional passages in Greek storytelling. Orpheus walked ahead, hearing only the soft footfalls behind him. Doubt crept into his mind. Was she truly there? Was this gift real, or merely a test? The path grew steeper, the air lighter. Just before reaching the surface, overwhelmed by uncertainty, he turned. For an instant, their eyes met. Eurydice reached toward him with calm acceptance, not fear. But the promise was broken, and she slipped back into the realm of shadows gently, like mist dissolving in sunlight. Some versions of the myth emphasized the tragedy, but ancient listeners often focused on the love expressed in Orpheus's journey. His descent into the underworld symbolized the lengths the heart travels when guided by devotion. His music, shaped by longing, became a reminder that emotional truth can bridge worlds, even if only for a moment. The Greeks understood this story not as a warning but as a reflection of the fragile balance between hope and doubt. Orpheus continued to wander the earth after losing Eurydice a second time, but his music never turned bitter. Instead, it softened, becoming a companion for those who carried their own quiet griefs. His melodies drifted across hills, comforting shepherds, travelers, and dreamers. Through him, the Greeks found a way to express sadness that did not overwhelm, sorrow that did not crush, and longing that did not consume. His story offered a gentle lesson. Love transforms the world, even when circumstances do not resolve as we hope. As the myth of Orpheus settled into the tapestry of Greek storytelling, another tale began to shimmer at the horizon, one filled with golden light, peaceful gardens, and guardians whose duty was as mysterious as it was serene. It was said that far in the west lay a place where beauty never faded and time moved with the slowness of a drifting cloud. This was the home of the Hesperides, whose realm held secrets as luminous as the stars themselves. Far beyond the familiar landscapes of Greece, past distant coastlines and wandering trade routes, ancient storytellers imagined a realm bathed in warm, everlasting light. It was a place where the horizon glowed like molten amber, and the air carried a sweetness that never faded. This realm was known as the Garden of the Hesperides, a sanctuary hidden at the western edge of the world. While many Greek myths pulse with conflict or ambition, the tale of this garden unfolds with the calm rhythm of a dream, offering a space of serenity within the vast tapestry of myth. The Hesperides, often described as radiant maidens with voices like soft birdsong, tended this divine garden with gentle devotion. Their names varied across regions and generations, but they were consistently depicted as daughters of the night or of the evening star, depending on the tradition. This ambiguity only added to their mystique. Some believed they were born from Nyx herself, carrying traces of twilight within their forms. Others claimed they belonged to the lineage of Atlas, their guardianship tied to the knowledge of distant horizons. But no matter the version, they embodied tranquility, embodying the quiet beauty that settles over the world at dusk. The garden they protected was said to hold trees bearing golden apples, fruits of extraordinary significance. These apples did not simply shimmer. They radiated a warm, soothing glow, as if holding pieces of the sun within their skins. Ancient poets described how the branches rustled with a gentle metallic whisper, creating a sound both comforting and unfamiliar. The apple symbolized many things over time: wisdom, vitality, temptation, or cosmic balance. Some scholars later interpreted them as metaphors for unreachable goals, the kinds of dreams that float just beyond human grasp. But within the myth itself, they represented something simpler: treasures too sacred to be touched without care. Guarding the garden alongside the Hesperides was a serpent named Ladon, whose form wound gracefully around the roots of the golden trees. Unlike other serpents in Greek stories, Ladon was not feared for his strength or cunning. Instead, he symbolized vigilance. His presence ensured that the apples remained untouched by those who sought them with reckless ambition. His shimmering scales were said to reflect the changing colors of the sunset, blending him harmoniously into the landscape. The image of a serpent resting peacefully beneath golden branches captured a sense of balance that resonated deeply in Greek imagination. The garden appeared in several myths, but its most famous moment came during the trials of Heracles. One of his labors required him to retrieve a golden apple, a task complicated not by danger but by the subtle moral weight of disturbing a place so peaceful. Heracles approached the task with caution, aware that the garden's serenity was not meant for disruption. In one version of the story, he convinced Atlas to fetch the apple for him, offering to hold the sky in the Titan's place. In another, he gently persuaded the Hesperides to grant him a single fruit. These variations reflect the fluid nature of oral storytelling, but each maintains the same core. The garden was a sacred place, and entering it required humility. Geographers and philosophers debated whether the Garden of the Hesperides had a real-world counterpart. Some argued that it symbolized distant lands to the west, perhaps near North Africa or the Canary Islands. Others believed it represented an idealized vision of nature untouched by human desire. These theories, while compelling, remained speculative, adding intrigue to the myth. The garden existed in a liminal space between reality and imagination, a setting shaped not by geography but by longing for calm, beauty, and permanence. At night, the garden took on an even more tranquil quality. The golden apples glowed softly beneath the star-strewn sky, casting warm reflections on the leaves. The Hesperides moved quietly between the trees, their footsteps barely disturbing the grass. Ladon's breathing blended with the hum of distant waves, creating a serene harmony unlike anything found in the mortal world. Listeners in ancient Greece often imagined this scene while resting after long days. The notion of a distant sanctuary, untouched by noise or conflict, offered a soothing comfort before sleep. The myth of the Hesperides carried another layer of meaning often overlooked. It reflected the human desire to preserve moments of stillness, to guard the places internal or external that bring peace. The golden apples symbolized the rare clarity found in calm moments, while the Hesperides represented the caretakers of that clarity. Ladon's watchfulness suggested that tranquility must be protected from the ambitions that threatened to disrupt it. This interpretation, though not explicitly stated in ancient texts, resonates with the emotional wisdom woven into the myth. As the tale of the Golden Gardens settled into the listeners' imaginations, the myths shifted their gaze skyward. The Greeks believed that the heavens told stories of their own, with each constellation holding a memory of heroes, creatures, or events preserved in the night sky. These celestial myths offered another kind of comfort, reminding people that even after life's uncertainties, stories could find eternal rest among the stars. When ancient Greeks lifted their eyes to the night sky, they did not see emptiness, they saw memory. Every star, every shimmering pattern, every faint glimmer scattered across the darkness carried a story preserved in quiet permanence. These constellations were more than navigational markers or celestial decorations. They were reminders that even fleeting events, small acts of courage, and gentle moments of transformation could be woven into the sky itself. The Greeks believed that the heavens held a soft archive of the world below, offering comfort to those who gazed upward during long, contemplative nights. One of the most beloved constellations was Orion, the hunter whose story blends skill and vulnerability. Some versions describe him as a giant of great strength, while others portray him as a passionate wanderer accompanied by faithful dogs. His fate varies across regions, but a consistent theme remains. He was placed among the stars after a dramatic encounter that shifted his path, whether seen as a tribute to his courage or a message about pride and humility. Orion's placement in the sky gave listeners a sense of continuity. The hunter rises each winter and fades in summer, echoing the rhythms of change that shape every season of life. Nearby, the Pleiades glimmer delicately, a cluster of 7 sisters pursued by Orion across the heavens. Their story is often told in soft tones, focusing on themes of protection and endurance. According to myth, Zeus placed the sisters in the sky to shield them from Orion's relentless pursuit, allowing them to shine in safety. Sailors used their appearance to mark the seasons, and farmers watched their rising and setting to plan harvests. This connection between myth and practical life strengthened the bond between sky and earth, making the night feel like a companion rather than a distant mystery. Another constellation, Cygnus shaped like a swan drifting across the darkness, carried a story woven with loyalty. It commemorates a friend who transformed into a swan to search for another who had fallen into a river. The myth suggests that devotion can transcend danger, echoing gently in the sky as a reminder of friendship's quiet power. The swan's wings stretch across the Milky Way, giving the impression that it glides effortlessly through worlds both seen and unseen. Ancient storytellers spoke of this constellation as a comforting presence for those who felt the ache of separation, breathing peace into the night. Cassiopeia, a queen whose pride brought consequences, sat forever enthroned in the heavens. Yet, instead of focusing on her vanity, many nighttime storytellers emphasized the image of a woman seated gently among the stars, her shape tracing a familiar pattern in the sky. Her rotating position, sometimes upright, sometimes appearing upside down, symbolized the shifting nature of fortune. This constant movement reminded listeners that life changes with time and perspective. No triumph or mistake remains fixed forever. Both adjust under the slow turning of the experience. Greek mythology also spoke of constellations formed from acts of compassion. One such story centers around Chiron, the wise centaur whose teachings shaped many heroes. After suffering a wound he could not heal, he offered his immortality to free Prometheus from eternal punishment. As a gesture of gratitude, the gods placed Chiron in the stars, as the constellation Sagittarius or Centaurus, depending on the tradition. His presence in the sky symbolized sacrifice marked not by pain, but by gentle recognition. His light shines faintly but steadily, reminding those who look up that wisdom often comes from empathy. For many Greeks, stargazing was an intimate ritual. Shepherds resting on quiet hillsides traced patterns above them as their flocks settled. Sailors seeking orientation during long voyages found comfort in familiar formations. Families gathered outside in the warmth of summer nights, sharing stories that flowed with a soothing cadence. The constellations became part of a nightly rhythm, offering stability in an unpredictable world. Their stories encouraged reflection, helping listeners understand their own challenges through the lens of cosmic imagery. The sky also offered myths of transformation, like that of Callisto, a nymph turned into a bear. In one version, she was placed in the heavens as Ursa Major, forever watched over by a son Arcus, who became Ursa Minor. Their story reflected maternal love, separation, and reunion, themes that resonated deeply with families who told the tale around fading evening fires. When children asked why the bears never dipped below the horizon, elders explained that the gods kept them close, protecting them from the dangers of the sea. This tender interpretation gave the night sky an emotional warmth that soothed listeners into rest. Even the faint, scattered stars of the Milky Way inspired stories. Some believed it was the path of souls moving gently toward the afterlife. Others saw it as spilled divine milk, representing nourishment and care. Regardless of the version, The Milky Way carried a sense of soft mystery, inviting the imagination to wander like footsteps along a dream-filled path. For the Greeks, the stars did not simply shine, they listened. They held memories, reflected emotions, and created a canopy of reassurance. In moments of uncertainty, people looked upward not for answers but for presence. The constellations were silent companions, reminding them that everything in life, joy, grief, change, had its place in a larger story. And as the sky watched over sleeping villages, another myth rose with the glow of the moon. It told of a goddess whose quiet radiance guided travelers and shaped the dreams of those who rested beneath her silver light. When the sun slipped below the horizon and the world settled into cooler tones, the ancient Greeks believed a different kind of presence rose into the sky, one that brought tenderness rather than brilliance. This presence was Selene, the goddess of the moon, whose soft glow touched oceans, mountains, and quiet villages with equal care. Unlike gods associated with storms or war, Selene moved with patience. Her light did not pierce the darkness, it soothed it, spreading across the night like a calm breath. In tales whispered before sleep, her radiance guided travelers, comforted lonely hearts, and shaped dreams in ways only the quietest nights allow. Selene was often pictured driving a silver chariot across the heavens, pulled by pale luminous horses whose hooves barely made sound. Some poets described her wearing a crown shaped like a crescent moon, its edges glowing gently. Others imagined her descending toward sleeping mortals, her steps leaving trails of shimmering light upon dew-covered grass. Though depictions of her varied, the tone was always the same. She represented serenity. Each night she appeared, offering reassurance that darkness was not emptiness, but another form of beauty. One of the most tender myths involving Selene concerns her love for Endymion, a handsome shepherd or astronomer depending on the tradition. Endymion was said to have possessed a purity of spirit that captivated the goddess. Drawn to his quiet nature, she visited him each evening as he slept on Mount Latmus. According to the myth, Zeus granted Endymion a unique gift of sleep that lasted eternally, keeping him youthful and untouched by time. Whether this gift was a blessing or a curse has long been debated. Some ancient writers viewed it as a peaceful pause, free from mortal worries. Others thought it reflected the longing Selene felt, wishing to preserve a moment of beauty without letting it fade. Selene's love for Endymion carried a gentle sadness, illustrating the ancient belief that even divine affection could be tinged with longing. She watched over him each night, brushing her light across his face, whispering unspoken thoughts into the still air. Though he never woke, their connection symbolized the quiet relationships people often nurture with memories, dreams, or hopes that cannot fully materialize. The Greeks embraced this emotional nuance, understanding that not all loves were meant to be fully lived. Some were meant to be cherished from afar. The moon's phases played an essential role in how the Greeks interpreted Selene's presence. When the moon was full, they imagined her chariot at the height of its journey, illuminating the world below with her richest glow. When the moon diminished, they believed she was retreating gently into her own realm, gathering strength before rising again. These shifts mirrored the rhythms of daily life, moments of clarity followed by moments of introspection. Selene's changing form reminded listeners that everything moves through cycles, and that rest, withdrawal, and renewal are natural parts of existence. Her influence touched more than the sky. Farmers watched her phases to guide planting and harvesting. Sailors trusted the moonlit reflections on the sea to navigate. Poets wrote verses inspired by her glow, comparing its softness to the warmth of familiar voices or the comfort of childhood memories. Even ordinary families felt her presence during long summer evenings when children played. Under her light and elders shared stories by the doorstep. Selene became associated not only with celestial beauty but with everyday tenderness, connecting the vastness of the sky with the intimacy of human experience. In later philosophical interpretations, Selene came to symbolize emotional reflection. Just as the moon reflects sunlight, the mind reflects thoughts that may not always originate from within. Some thinkers suggested that Selene represented the ability to see one's inner world more clearly during quiet moments. While these interpretations are speculative rather than factual, they echo the calming effect the moon has on those who observe it in silence. Its glow gently encourages introspection without overwhelming the senses. Ancient rituals honoring Selene was simple and peaceful. People placed small offerings of honey or milk on altars during full moons, asking for protection during journeys or gentle dreams for children. Young women braided flowers into wreaths as gifts for the goddess, hoping her light would bring balance to their emotions. None of these practices involved fear. They reflected a relationship built on appreciation, gratitude, and trust in the soft rhythms of the night. Selena's myth also connected to the tides of sleep. Many believed that the moon influenced dreams, shaping their clarity or mood. On nights when the moon shone brightly, some said they sensed an unusual stillness, as if Selene herself guided their thoughts toward peaceful terrain. Others felt that her glow softened emotional burdens, allowing them to rest more deeply. Although modern science does not confirm these ancient beliefs, the emotional truth behind them remains meaningful. The moon has always stirred imagination and shaped the way people experience the world after dusk. As Selene's silver chariot drifted across the sky and her stories settled gently into the hearts of listeners, Greek myth turned its gaze toward another realm, one often misunderstood yet filled with layers of calm structure and surprising clarity. This was the domain of Hades, a place not defined by fear but by order, quiet dignity, and the steady presence of the unseen. Among all the realms imagined by the ancient Greeks, none has been more misunderstood over time than the kingdom of Hades. Modern retellings often portray it as a place of dread, filled with flames and torment. But these images do not reflect the older Greek view. In the earliest stories, Hades ruled a realm of profound stillness, where the souls of the departed drifted gently toward rest. His kingdom was not a punishment for the majority of the dead, but a vast, shadowed landscape shaped by order, memory, and calm. It was a place where life's noise faded into soft echoes and where the mysteries of existence deepened in quiet clarity. Hades himself was depicted as solemn, reserved, and dignified. He did not roam the heavens or the seas like his brothers, Zeus and Poseidon. Instead, he remained within his realm, ensuring that the boundary between life and death remained balanced. His presence was neither cruel nor aggressive. It was steady, like the weight of time or the firmness of earth beneath one's feet. Some Greeks even referred to him as the Unseen One, suggesting that his power came from constancy rather than spectacle. Though feared for the inevitability he represented, he was not hated. His fairness was respected, and his restraint set him apart from other gods whose tempers swayed with emotion. The underworld itself was divided into gentle layers. The majority of souls entered a region called the Asphodel Meadows, a quiet plain where they wandered peacefully, free from hunger or pain. This meadow was not a paradise, nor was it bleak. It resembled a calm twilight landscape, with soft grasses, muted colors, and a constant sense of quiet movement. Souls in this place existed in a state of gentle reflection, neither joyful nor sorrowful, simply present. The Greeks believed this neutral existence allowed the spirit to rest after the complexities of mortal life. Another region, Elysium, was reserved for those whose lives embodied virtue, creativity, or exceptional service. Unlike later depictions of perfect heavens, Elysium was described as a tranquil field filled with soft breezes, warm sunlight, and music carried through the air. Those who reached it experienced a serenity that felt timeless. Philosophers often interpreted this setting as a symbol of inner peace rather than a literal destination. They believed that people who cultivated harmony during life would naturally carry that harmony into death. Although this interpretation is philosophical rather than historical, it reflects the core tone of the myth, a belief that peace emerges from a life lived with clarity. Hades also presided over the river Lethe, whose waters provided forgetfulness to those who needed it. Souls who drank from the river released the burdens they carried, clearing their minds before beginning a new phase of existence. This detail captures a quiet form of mercy within the underworld's structure. Lethe did not erase identity but softened the weight of memory, offering relief from past pain. Ancient writers commented on this aspect with surprising tenderness, noting that forgetfulness can sometimes be a gentle gift. Despite the calm and order of his domain, Hades was often misunderstood by mortals. He rarely visited the world above, and his detachment made him seem distant. Yet the myth suggests that he felt deeply, even if he seldom expressed emotion. His love for Persephone, for example, was marked not by passion but by unwavering devotion. He did not try to change her or shape her into something she was not. Instead, he adapted his kingdom to her presence, allowing light, life, and flowers to bloom in places that had never known them. This act symbolized a balance between darkness and growth, a theme deeply rooted in Greek thought. The Greeks believed that sleep offered a brief connection to the underworld. When the mind drifted away from waking reality, it entered a realm where shadows softened and unseen truths emerged. Though neither frightening nor dangerous, this nightly descent echoed the journey each soul would eventually take. In this way, the underworld became intertwined with the quiet process of dreaming. Hades' realm shaped the backdrop of introspection, helping the mind understand its own depths. Listeners who heard these stories before bed found comfort in the idea that darkness could hold structure and peace rather than fear. Contrary to later interpretations, Hades's rule emphasized neutrality. He did not interfere with mortal lives unless necessary. He did not influence wars or manipulate desires. His power came from acceptance of endings, of transitions, and of the quiet stages that follow change. This acceptance offered a grounding perspective for those who reflected on the myth. It suggested that even the most mysterious realms of existence were governed by calm forces, not chaos. Some ancient philosophers believed that Hades symbolized the human capacity for introspection, just as his realm existed beneath the earth. They imagined that each person possessed an inner landscape hidden beneath daily thoughts. This inner world held fears, memories, hopes, and secrets. By exploring these depths through sleep, meditation, or quiet reflection, people could better understand themselves. While this interpretation cannot be confirmed, it harmonizes with the serene tone of the older myths. As stories of Hades drifted across Greece, they helped people approach the idea of endings with less fear. They offered the reassurance that transitions, even those wrapped in mystery, could contain order and meaning. And from this calm realm, Greek myth moved toward lighter themes, once again toward youth, renewal, and the soft promise of rejuvenation embodied by Hebe, the goddess of eternal freshness. From the quiet stillness of the underworld, Greek myth rises gently toward the brightness of renewal. In this softer space, where time seems to stretch and contract with an effortless rhythm, we find Hebe, the goddess of youth. Her presence is not associated with the restless urgency of wanting to remain young forever. Instead, she embodies the emotional state that youth represents: clarity, lightness, and the fresh perspective that allows the mind to rest. Hebe's stories were often told in peaceful settings, during moments when families gathered after dusk, or when travelers paused to share a meal beneath soft moonlight. Through her, listeners found comfort in the idea that renewal is always possible. Hebe was the daughter of Zeus and Hera, yet she carried none of the stormy traits associated with her parents. She moved with quiet grace, representing harmony rather than conflict. In many depictions, she served ambrosia to the gods, offering nourishment that strengthened their vitality. This role was more than ceremonial. It symbolized the steady flow of energy that keeps both the divine and the mortal worlds in balance. She did not wield weapons or influence wars. Her gift was subtle. She kept the spirit light and the heart open to possibility. Her presence in Olympus was associated with soft breezes, blooming meadows, and the gentle laughter of springtime. Some ancient writers described her as a figure who could reset emotional heaviness, lifting the weight of worry in the same way fresh air clears the mind. Although Hebe's myths are less dramatic than those of other deities, their tone is filled with warmth. She represented the delicate strength that comes not from exertion but from renewal, like drawing a breath after a long day or waking from a comforting sleep. One of the most interesting aspects of Hebe's story involves her marriage to Heracles after he achieved immortality. Their union revealed a different side of the hero, one softened by companionship rather than trials. Heracles, known for his strength and endurance, found balance in Hebe's gentle presence. Their relationship was often interpreted as a symbolic union between resilience and restoration. It suggested that even the mightiest figures benefit from moments of calm. Through this myth, ancient listeners were reminded that victory and rest coexist, and that rejuvenation is not a luxury but a natural part of the cycle of life. Hebe's ability to restore youth also carried deeper, symbolic meaning. Some traditions claimed she granted rejuvenation to mortals in rare cases, representing the possibility of emotional or spiritual renewal rather than literal transformation. Her power echoed the belief that new beginnings can emerge from moments of stillness. Whether this idea was taken literally or metaphorically, it resonated with those seeking comfort during difficult times. It suggested that life's heaviness could soften, that weariness could be replaced with clarity, and that the heart could regain its gentle rhythm after turmoil. The Greeks associated Hebe with the small, meaningful gestures that bring quiet joy: the first warm breeze of spring, the glow of sunrise on a calm morning, the feeling of washing away exhaustion in pure water. These details reflected her domain, reminding people that youthfulness is not measured by age but by the ability to feel hope in a world shaped by shifting fortunes. The idea of an eternal spring within the soul offered encouragement. It allowed listeners to imagine a place within themselves untouched by the wear of daily worry. In some philosophical interpretations, Hebe represented the emotional freshness that arises when the mind lets go of unnecessary weight. Just as the body feels lighter after rest, the spirit feels renewed when thoughts settle. Her myth connected gently to sleep, suggesting that true restoration happens not through force but through quiet surrender. While these interpretations are speculative, they align with the calming tone of her stories. Hebe's presence in mythology is not demanding. It is invitational, reminding people to slow down and breathe deeply. Although Hebe was not worshipped as widely as other deities, the rituals dedicated to her were peaceful and heartfelt. Families offered small bowls of pure water or fresh flowers, symbols of renewal. Young people prayed to her during rites of passage, asking for clarity as they stepped into new stages of life. These gestures reflected a soft form of devotion, one rooted in gratitude rather than fear. The Greeks understood that the spirit of youth within the heart did not vanish with time. It simply required care. As stories of Hebe drifted through households and sanctuaries, they often blended into tales of the Muses, deities who inspired creativity, music, storytelling, and the tender spark of imagination. While Hebe renewed the spirit, the Muses illuminated the path ahead, guiding the mind toward calm expression and the gentle unfolding of ideas. As the soft presence of Hebe lingered in the hearts of mortals, another set of divine figures emerged from the shadows of mythology. Figures who bridged the quiet spaces of renewal with the vibrant stirrings of creativity. These were the Muses, goddesses of inspiration who breathed life into the arts, giving form and voice to the dreams and stories that would live long after their time. Unlike the Olympian gods, whose powers often demanded dramatic gestures, the Muses shaped the world with subtlety, guiding the mind toward expression without forcing it into any particular mold. They were not creators of chaos or warriors of grand battles. Instead, they moved like whispers on the wind, encouraging the heart to flow freely, like a gentle stream carving its way through an ancient landscape. The Greeks imagined the Muses as 9 distinct figures, each embodying a different aspect of human expression. Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, inspired heroes and bards to tell stories that spanned generations. Clio, the muse of history, illuminated the paths of memory, ensuring that the past would not fade into obscurity. Erato, the muse of love poetry, filled the world with sweet verses and soft songs that echoed the rhythm of the heart. Euterpe, the muse of music, called forth melodies from instruments and voices, weaving them into tapestries of sound. Melpomene, the muse of tragedy, brought depth to the human experience, allowing individuals to confront their deepest fears and sorrows. Thalia, the muse of comedy, helped people find laughter even in dark times, reminding them that humor, too, had its place in the world. Terpsichore, the muse of dance, shaped the graceful movements that brought the body into harmony with the soul. Urania, the muse of astronomy, inspired the contemplation of the stars, guiding philosophers to understand the mysteries of the universe. And finally, Polyhymnia, the muse of sacred hymns, inspired devotion, guiding mortals to connect with the divine through prayer and song. Together, the Muses formed a divine network that connected all aspects of human creativity. They were present in the quiet moments of reflection as much as in the loud bursts of expression. Their influence was not always direct. Some stories suggested that the Muses could be called upon for guidance, while others implied that their presence could be felt in the air itself. The Greeks believed that inspiration did not always come from effort or struggle, but from moments when the mind and spirit were allowed to rest and open freely. It was in these moments that the Muses found their way into the hearts of poets, musicians, philosophers, and artists, shaping the thoughts that would be passed down through generations. While the Muses did not demand worship in the grand manner of Zeus or Athena, they were still revered in quiet, personal ways. Temples were built in their honor, often near rivers or secluded groves where inspiration could be found in the beauty of nature. Poets and musicians would offer small sacrifices, such as the first fruits of a harvest or the first flowers of spring, in hopes of gaining their favor. Artists often invoked the Muses before beginning their work, seeking their guidance in the act of creation. It was said that when the Muses were pleased, the work flowed effortlessly, but when they were distant, the artists struggled to find the right words or notes. The connection between the Muses and the rhythms of nature was not lost on the Greeks. The seasons themselves, with their cycles of renewal and rest, mirrored the creative processes they believed the Muses governed. Just as nature ebbed and flowed, so too did the creative impulses of the human soul. A painter might spend a season in stillness, waiting for the right moment to pick up their brush. A poet might write dozens of lines that never see the light of day before finally finding the words that would capture their true feeling. But the Muses, like the seasons, were always present, guiding these moments of quiet rest and passionate outburst. In this sense, the Muses were intimately connected to the concept of time. They did not force creativity. They allowed it to emerge organically, much as the moon allowed the tides to rise and fall. The Greeks believed that inspiration, much like the changing phases of the moon, moved in cycles. There were times of drought, when the well of creativity seemed dry, and times of abundance, when the ideas flowed freely. The Muses encouraged patience during the barren moments and celebration during the fruitful ones. They helped to remind artists that creativity was not a constant flow but a natural rhythm, one that ebbed and flowed like the tides of the sea. One of the most powerful elements of the Muses' influence was their ability to make the divine accessible. Through music, poetry, and art, the gods could speak directly to the human heart. The Muses made it possible for mortals to touch the divine through their own creativity. They bridged the gap between the mortal and immortal realms, allowing the sacred to enter the everyday. In a way, they taught the Greeks that the act of creation was not just a way to express human emotion, but a way to commune with the divine itself. As night fell and the stars shone brightly above, the Muses continued their quiet work, filling the air with inspiration and guiding those who sought their presence. The stories of the Muses reminded the Greeks that creativity was a sacred act, one that could illuminate the darkest corners of the soul and bring light to the world. And from this well of inspiration, Greek myth turns once again to themes of transformation and the quiet beauty of moments that echo far beyond their time. Among the myths woven most intricately with the themes of love and transformation, the story of Cupid and Psyche stands apart as one of the most emotionally profound and universally resonant. It is not merely a tale of a god and a mortal. It is a story about the journey of the heart, how it navigates doubt, trust, sacrifice, and ultimately union. In this myth, love is portrayed not as a perfect, all-consuming force, but as something delicate and often difficult, requiring the overcoming of personal fears and the acceptance of vulnerability. Psyche, whose name means soul, was born into a life of beauty and peace. She was so extraordinary that even Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, grew jealous of her. The people of the land worshipped Psyche, praising her beauty in ways they had once reserved for Aphrodite herself. This praise, however, did not bring Psyche happiness. Despite the admiration of others, she felt isolated and uncertain. Her beauty was an external gift, but the gift of the soul, the depth of connection and inner peace, seemed to elude her. In jealousy, Aphrodite ordered her son, Cupid, to make Psyche fall in love with the most vile creature on earth. Cupid, known for his ability to ignite passion with a mere touch of his arrows, approached Psyche without realizing he would be the one to fall deeply in love. When he saw her for the first time, he was struck by her beauty, but more so by her innocence and purity. In that moment, he reversed his mother's command, unable to carry out her wishes. Instead, he decided to keep Psyche's love for himself, but in secret. Cupid's love for Psyche, though powerful, could not remain hidden forever. His decisions, motivated by deep affection, had already begun to weave a complex web of fate that Psyche herself could not yet understand. Their love, though genuine, was a quiet one, lived in the shadows, where Psyche never saw Cupid's true form. She lived with the knowledge of his presence, but never the fullness of his being. This hiddenness became the first trial of their relationship. Psyche's doubt, ignited by Cupid's secrecy, began to grow. Unable to quell her curiosity, Psyche finally betrayed Cupid's trust. One night, as he slept beside her, she lit a lamp to gaze upon his face. What she saw was not the hideous creature she feared, but the beautiful god Cupid, radiant with divine beauty. But in that moment of discovery, a drop of oil fell from the lamp. Waking Cupid, heartbroken by her lack of trust, he fled, leaving Psyche to face the consequences of her actions. This moment marked the beginning of Psyche's journey, a journey not only through external trials but through the depths of her own heart, where trust, love, and transformation awaited. Cupid's departure sent Psyche into a deep despair. She was lost without him, as if her soul had been torn from her body. But Psyche did not give up. Her love for Cupid was so profound that she sought him out, determined to win back his affection. This search led her into the realm of Aphrodite, who set her a series of impossible tasks, each one more difficult than the last. The tasks were designed not only to test Psyche's physical strength but to challenge her understanding of love, self-worth, and inner courage. The first task required Psyche to sort a massive pile of mixed grain sweet barley and lentils by evening. Despairing, Psyche sat alone in the task, unsure how to proceed. Yet, as she worked, ants appeared, attracted by her sorrow and desire. The ants, symbolizing patience and small kindnesses, helped her complete the task. This first moment of unexpected aid foreshadowed the theme of the myth, that even in the darkest moments, help can come from the most surprising sources. The second task involved gathering golden wool from fierce, dangerous sheep. The task seemed impossible, but Psyche again found guidance through a simple act. a reed speaking softly, told her to wait until the sheep rested in the coolness of the evening, and then she could safely collect the wool from their horns. This act of patience, guided by external wisdom, helped Psyche grow emotionally, teaching her that sometimes the answers to life's most difficult challenges lie in waiting, listening, and knowing when to act. The third task required Psyche to collect water from a dangerous river that flowed from a steep, treacherous mountain. This time, an eagle appeared, offering to help her. With its assistance, Psyche was able to complete the task safely, her ability to trust and accept help reinforcing her growth. By the time she reached the final task, which involved retrieving a box from the underworld, Psyche had become stronger, wiser, and more willing to embrace the unknown. Despite completing these trials, the final test lay within herself. In a moment of weakness and curiosity, Psyche opened the box that was meant for Persephone in the underworld, hoping to find beauty or a secret to end her suffering. Instead, she fell into a deep, dreamlike sleep, overwhelmed by the contents of the box. At that moment, it was only through Cupid's intervention that she was awakened and restored. His forgiveness marked the culmination of Psyche's transformation. She had grown from a woman filled with doubt into one who understood the depth of love, the importance of trust, and the courage to face the unknown. Their reunion was not one of perfection, but of acceptance and understanding. Through their trials, they had both changed. Psyche was granted immortality, symbolizing the eternal nature of love that survives even the darkest challenges. Cupid's love, once hidden, was now open, and together, they shared a love that was not just powerful, but wise and enduring. And so, the myth of Cupid and Psyche carries a message that endures through time, that love is not a force that arrives easily or without struggle, but one that, through trials and growth, transforms those who embrace it. The story speaks to the quiet, subtle power of trust, patience, and inner strength, reminding listeners that every journey, no matter how painful or difficult, can lead to greater understanding and transformation. As we turn our gaze once more to the underworld, we find ourselves revisiting the tragic yet profound tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. This myth, so deeply embedded in the fabric of Greek culture, captures not only the power of music but also the timeless struggle between love and fate. The story moves with a quiet sorrow, its rhythm built not on the loud crash of destiny but on the soft, heartbreaking steps taken by Orpheus as he journeyed into the realm of shadows, driven by his love for Eurydice and his desperate hope to bring her back from the dead. Orpheus, a master of music, was born with a gift that transcended mortal understanding. His songs had the power to charm all living things. Trees bent their branches to listen, rivers stilled in reverence, and wild animals gathered at his feet, entranced by the notes that flowed from his lyre. Orpheus did not simply play music. He weaved emotions into each melody, crafting stories that touched the heart of nature itself. The Greeks believed that music was a bridge between the divine and the mortal, and Orpheus with his lyre was the most skilled bridge builder. Yet, as with all great myths, Orpheus's life was not without tragedy. He married Eurydice, a nymph whose beauty and grace matched his own. Their love was one of those rare connections, the kind that seemed as if it had been fated by the gods themselves. But fate, as it often does in Greek mythology, had other plans. Eurydice, while walking through a meadow, was bitten by a snake and died in an instant, leaving Orpheus heartbroken and lost. He could not accept her death. His music, once full of joy, turned to sorrow, and the beautiful melodies that had once soothed the world now echoed with the pain of loss. In his grief, Orpheus journeyed to the underworld, determined to reclaim his beloved. His path was not one of violence or rage, but of quiet resolve. He knew that only through the power of his music could he gain entry to the realm of Hades, the god of the underworld, and begged for Eurydice's return. When he arrived, he played a song so filled with sorrow and longing that even the gods of the underworld were moved. Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the gates, lay down in peace. The rivers of the underworld ceased to flow, and the Furies, who tormented the souls of the dead, wept in sympathy. The very walls of the realm seemed to bend under the weight of Orpheus's grief. Moved by his devotion and the beauty of his music, Hades agreed to allow Eurydice to return to the living, but with one condition: Orpheus must not look back at her until they reached the surface. This condition, though seemingly simple, was fraught with emotional weight. The Greeks believed that true love required faith, and Orpheus was being tested. The journey from the underworld back to the world of the living was long, and doubt began to creep into Orpheus's heart. Would Eurydice really follow him? Was she truly behind him, or had he been tricked by the gods? As they neared the surface, Orpheus could no longer resist. In a moment of uncertainty, he turned to look at Eurydice, desperate for confirmation that she was truly there. But in that instant, she vanished, returning to the underworld forever. Orpheus's heart shattered once again, not from the loss of Eurydice, but from the realization that his inability to trust had cost him everything. He had failed the test, and in doing so, he lost the chance for a reunion. The tale of Orpheus and Eurydice is one of the most emotionally poignant stories in Greek mythology, and it carries a deep resonance even today. It teaches that love, while powerful, is fragile, and that trust is a necessary foundation for any relationship. Orpheus's journey into the underworld was not just a physical one, it was an emotional and spiritual odyssey, a test of his devotion and his ability to surrender to the unknown. His failure to trust, to allow the journey to unfold without doubt, mirrors the struggles many people face in their own lives. The struggle to let go of fear and trust in love and relationships and in the process of life itself. While the myth is often seen as tragic, it also carries an underlying message of hope. Orpheus's love for Eurydice never wavered, even as it led him into the deepest darkness. His music, even in its sorrow, continues to inspire. It reminds us that love is not a simple, uncomplicated force. It is like Orpheus's music, full of depth, complexity, and the capacity to touch the divine. In the end, Orpheus's journey shows that even in loss, there is beauty, and that the music of the soul can continue, even after the final note has been played. As Orpheus's lyre became silent, the myth of his love and loss settled into the hearts of those who heard it. And as they slept beneath the stars, they dreamed of love that transcends time, of devotion that endures beyond life's trials, and of the quiet strength that arises from trusting what is unseen. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice continues to echo through time, reminding us of the transformative power of love and the quiet spaces between the heartbeats of life. While the gods of Olympus ruled the heavens and the underworld, and the great heroes of Greece embarked on epic journeys filled with trials and triumphs, there are quieter, lesser-known creatures whose stories carry subtle lessons about resilience, community, and harmony. Among them is the capybara, an animal whose calm demeanor and strong sense of connection to others make it a quiet yet powerful symbol of endurance and peace in the natural world. Though not a part of the Greek pantheon, the capybara shares much in common with the gentle beings of mythology. Beings that know how to move through the world with quiet strength. The capybara, the world's largest rodent, is native to South America, but its story is one that speaks universally to those who value community and serenity. In many ways, the capybara embodies the essence of balance. Known for its docile nature and strong social bonds, this humble creature moves gracefully through its environment, always aware of the interconnectedness between itself and the world around it. Its behavior offers a stark contrast to the aggression often seen in nature, where survival depends on speed, strength, and dominance. The capybara's existence is a reminder that resilience can come in the form of gentleness, and strength is not always defined by loud displays but by quiet endurance. For those who have had the chance to observe them in their natural habitat, capybaras are creatures of remarkable calm. They spend much of their time near water, where they swim and bathe to keep cool. The fluidity with which they move in water suggests a deep understanding of the need for relaxation and balance. In the same way that ancient Greek myths often celebrated the gods who embodied the elements, like Poseidon with his control over water, the capybara's relationship with water represents a harmony between self and environment. It teaches us that, in the face of challenges, sometimes the key to surviving is knowing when to rest, reflect, and find peace within ourselves. One of the most fascinating aspects of capybaras is their deep sense of community. Unlike many solitary animals, capybaras live in large, tight-knit groups, often sharing their lives with other species. They exhibit a remarkable sense of cooperation and understanding, with individuals looking out for one another. This communal approach extends even to their relationships with other animals. Capybaras have been known to live alongside birds, monkeys, and even smaller mammals, all coexisting peacefully in a shared environment. Their calm demeanor allows them to engage in these harmonious partnerships, reminding us that cooperation and coexistence often lead to a more balanced existence than the pursuit of dominance. This peaceful nature is not without its challenges. Like the Greek myths that portray the gods as both protectors and destroyers, the capybara's existence is not immune to danger. They face threats from predators like jaguars, caimans, and anacondas, but their survival relies not on strength or speed, but on their ability to stay alert and remain together as a group. When danger approaches, capybaras will signal one another, and through their coordinated efforts they ensure the safety of the entire group. This behavior emphasizes the importance of unity and awareness, showing that even in the face of adversity, the collective strength of a community can overcome the greatest challenges. In many ways, the capybara story echoes the teachings of ancient Greek myth, which often highlighted the importance of balance, community, and subtle strength. While the gods may have been mighty and their tales filled with dramatic gestures, the true heroes in these stories were often those who could navigate life with wisdom and restraint. Just as the capybara moves through its world with grace and an understanding of its place within the ecosystem, so too do the heroes of Greek myth demonstrate their power through thoughtfulness, compassion, and a deep connection to the natural world. The capybara also serves as a reminder of the quiet resilience that exists in nature, even in the face of hardship. It does not seek out conflict but responds to challenges with calm and composure, trusting in the strength of its group and the wisdom of experience. This characteristic makes it a quiet hero, one whose influence is felt not through grand gestures but through the peaceful way it moves through life. As night falls and the stars begin to twinkle above, the capybara's gentle ways echo softly in the rhythm of nature. It teaches us that resilience does not always need to be loud. Strength can be found in patience, cooperation, and a quiet trust in the cycles of life. In a world often marked by chaos, the capybara's ability to live in harmony with its surroundings reminds us that peace is not a passive state but an active choice to live with care and mindfulness. And so the myth of the capybara, though not born from the ancient stories of gods and heroes, reminds us of the quiet virtues that exist all around us, in the creatures of the earth, in the natural world, and within our own hearts. It teaches that the true measure of strength lies not in how loudly we fight, but in how gently we navigate the world with respect for the delicate balance of life. As the final stories of Greek myth settle into the quiet spaces of the night, there is a deep sense of peace that lingers in the air. These myths, so full of gods, heroes, and creatures that traverse realms beyond our understanding, are not merely tales to entertain or instruct. They are windows into the eternal cycle of life, death, transformation, and renewal cycles that touch us all, no matter how far we travel from the past. They remind us that sleep, in its deepest sense, is not just a time of rest, but a journey into the very essence of existence. Greek myths have always carried the subtle message that the universe is shaped by forces far beyond human control. These forces are not always violent or demanding. Often they are quiet, hidden, and gentle. Whether it is the calm embrace of Nyx, the gentle wings of Hypnos, or the soft guidance of the Muses, these divine beings reflect a wisdom that is grounded in balance. In their stories, we find not only the dramatic highs and lows of human experience, but the moments in between, the quiet spaces where transformation happens. As we drift into the sleep of the soul, the stories of these gods and goddesses become part of the tapestry of our own dreams. They speak to the parts of us that long for peace, for understanding, for connection. Through them we find a language that transcends the noise of the world and allows us to tap into a deeper wisdom. This is not the wisdom of intellect or reason, but the wisdom of the heart, the kind of knowledge that comes not from seeking answers but from surrendering to the flow of life itself. The myths of the Greek gods offer us more than just narratives of divine intervention or heroic feats. They are stories of vulnerability and strength, of surrender and resilience, of loss and return. These stories, passed down through generations, have found their place not only in the hearts of those who first heard them but also in the hearts of every generation that followed. They remind us that even in our darkest moments, there is always the possibility of renewal, of love, of transformation. In the quiet embrace of night, as the stories of the gods and their realms drift through our minds, we are reminded of the eternal nature of the human experience. Just as the Greeks saw their lives reflected in the myths they told, we too can find our own stories woven into the timeless patterns of the stars. Each moment of struggle, of joy, of heartache, and of triumph becomes part of the greater tapestry of existence. And in this, we find peace. As we close our eyes and drift into sleep, we carry with us the quiet wisdom of the ancient gods. Their stories, shaped by time and memory, continue to guide us through the night. They remind us that even in the vastness of the universe, even in the face of uncertainty, there is a quiet power that lies within each of Use's power that connects us to the divine, to the earth, and to each other. And as we rest, we are part of this eternal cycle, where the boundaries between the waking world and the world of dreams dissolve into one gentle, continuous rhythm. And so, as the last whispers of the myths fade into the stillness of the night, we are left with the quiet knowledge that, just as the gods and heroes of ancient Greece faced their own journeys of transformation, so too do we. We are all part of this great cosmic dance, moving through the seasons of our lives, touched by the quiet power of stories, and gently guided by the wisdom of the universe. This is where our journey ends. But like all stories, it never truly finishes. It lives on, in our hearts and minds, woven into the fabric of our dreams. Sleep well, and may the whispers of the ancient myths guide you through the night.